Women love him, men want to be him, and they also probably love him. And so unless you hate the New England Patriots, chances are you probably like Chris Evans. But there is a lot more to this clean-cut heartthrob than meets the eye. Born in Boston to a mother who worked in the arts, Chris was always a very creative individual. He and his siblings would perform skits in front of his parents, and over the years, his parents would encourage this behavior by sending him to certain acting camps where he would excel. Chris would start his career in acting at the age of 18 in Boston, and he would go in for a few commercials and got a few bit roles at the time, but nothing substantial. So at 19, he packed up his bags and moved to Los Angeles on his own. And like many actors, he had to grind out his early years, doing a few more bit roles in television shows and movies wherever he could get a chance. And Chris, just like any other actor that doesn't have crazy connections or crazy money, had to work his way up like everybody else and go through a lot of years of trials and tribulations where you're constantly doubting whether this career is for you and whether you're good enough to be an actor at all. He reportedly had a ton of anxiety at the time about whether he was in the right career or not, and that would be a common trend for him for the next several years. And Chris tells a really good story about how somewhere between when he was 18 and 20, either in Boston or LA, he was driving to an audition that was hosted by Ben Affleck, which leads me to believe it was in Boston, where he parked outside, came in, and he shakes Ben's hand, says, "How do you do?" And the first thing that comes out of Chris's mouth is he asks Ben if where he parked was okay. Then Ben goes in his weird Boston accent, "Well, where'd you park?" And Chris goes, "Oh, in the metered spot." And Ben's like, "Did you pay the meter?" And Chris goes, "Yeah." And he goes on to fumble the entire audition because he's so nervous and anxious that he doesn't get it. So despite how fun and cool Chris may seem in all the interviews you see him in, he's going through a lot and he has a lot of personal anxiety, and you could see it in that moment. It doesn't seem like Chris ever had anything in acting given to him at all. He really had to struggle and try and push for everything that he got. I think it's very easy for superhero movie fans, myself included, to kind of disconnect these actors from being an artist. Because Chris Evans did Captain America, you don't look at him the same way that you look at Timothée Chalamet for doing Lady Bird. Those artistic films are seen to be done by artistic actors, but because of the genre that Chris Evans was in, you don't look at him as an artist, or I definitely don't. And I was going through a lot of Reddit pages while making this video, and a lot of people online seem to share that same opinion. But let's go back to where a lot of people consider his big break, which was Not Another Teen Movie. Not Another Teen Movie was a critical flop, but it did incredibly well in the box office, bringing in $66 million on a budget of $15 million. The show is basically a raunchy but fun parody of teen movies at the time, and the show was fine. It's very funny, and it's still very popular today. But the reason it's such a big deal to be in a show that gets a lot of attention is because it finally gets you the clout or connections that you really need in Hollywood to get another job. Oh, hey everybody, I'm just gonna slide in here and ask you to subscribe if you're enjoying the video already. My next video is gonna be about Ryan Reynolds. It's gonna be a little bit of a spicy story, but I think you'll like it. So subscribe and turn notifications on, and back to the video. Before you have any big credits on your resume, it's incredibly difficult to get anything substantial in Hollywood. So you'd think, after being in a show that more than quadrupled its budget, that Chris Evans would be doing pretty well after that, right? Not exactly. In the few years after that, he would do about one show slash movie or film per year for the next about 3 or 4 years. And these were not blockbuster films. The TV shows were not on everybody's screens in the evening. They were just not very substantial roles at all for the guy. But I can imagine at this time, Chris was feeling an enormous amount of anxiety because he had finally gotten some momentum in his career for the first time ever. And yet, he still wasn't doing anything massive. To try and understand a bit about what he was feeling, try to understand what it was like to apply to college, or to apply to your first job, or to ask a girl out at the bar. Those things are so difficult, but that's where most people get to feel rejection in their lives. But actors feel it on a weekly basis. They put hours upon hours of work into their audition tapes, and most of the time, they don't even get told no. They just ghost them entirely unless you get the job. It's really heartbreaking and difficult and really hard on your mental health. And this is what makes a lot of actors quit acting. And Chris was very nearly one of those actors. But in 2005, he finally broke into superhero movies with his role in Fantastic Four. This is where his career was finally able to catch some decent momentum. He would do another sequel to Fantastic Four, and he would voice a character in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And after that, he went from doing about one film or TV show per year to doing 2 to 4 film and TV shows per year. And a lot of his films really got ripped into by critics, but Chris kept pushing. And this whole time, Chris was building up more and more connections and becoming much more well-known in the industry. Because by 2010, he had worked with Keanu Reeves, Scarlett Johansson, Jason Statham, William H. Macy, among some many other notable actors and directors. And we finally made it to 2010, where Chris signed the deal to be Captain America. However, you'd think you'd probably jump all over that offer, a 10-year deal to make an insane amount of money and play one of potentially the most iconic roles in superhero history. But Chris didn't jump all over it at all. In fact, he initially rejected it. The problem for Chris was that this was a 10-year deal, and he was worried that he would feel locked into a contract playing this certain character that would kind of hold back the rest of his career. And it can be a very worrying thing. And Chris Evans was scared, but he ended up getting a phone call from Robert Downey Jr. that helped convince him otherwise. I think Robert Downey Jr. talked to him about the addiction issues that he had and what being in the Marvel movies had meant to him. And I don't know what else, but something worked and Chris Evans signed that contract. A lot of people think he was born to play Captain America, and I tend to agree with them. The guy did an incredible job doing it, and they might not be the most artistic things, they might not have the most amazing stories. Whatever you say about it, Chris did a wonderful job at it, and he was an integral part in making the franchise probably the most successful franchise in movie history. However, I think because of how good he was as Captain America and how much everyone loved seeing him as Captain America, people began to think of him as only Captain America. And throughout his contract, there were moments where he would try and step away from the Marvel movies. He had his directorial debut with Before We Go, which is just a cheesy rom-com, but I rather enjoyed it, and I thought it was very good. I do like rom-coms, though, but it's pretty decent. And he did several other movies or small bit roles during this time, but everything he did was still overshadowed by Steve Rogers. But I believe Chris thought that too, and I think he believed that he could do a lot more than wear spandex and throw frisbees, even though he was so phenomenal at that. After his contract ended, he jumped immediately as far away from Steve Rogers as possible, because he probably just wanted to spread his wings and prove to everyone and probably to himself that he could do more than just be Captain America. And he did. He played a manipulative cop alongside Michael Cera in a play on Broadway, and he got a Broadway.com Audience Award for Favorite Featured Actor in a Play. He was also nominated for something else, but that's not too bad for a role actor, huh? Since then, he's worked in more and more obscure roles, probably trying to separate and to prove that he can do a lot more outside of his star-spangled supersuit. In 2019, Chris did a wonderful job in Knives Out, playing like the rich, spoiled son, and it was actually a really good experience. I really recommend watching it. It was very good, and he did a wonderful job, and that was finally a show that got a decent amount of attention compared to Avengers. And since then, he's worked a few high-profile shows. Notably, most recently, I think he did something for Apple TV with Ana de Armas. But the problem was that it's just nothing has been on the same level as Captain America was. And honestly, I don't care how successful Chris Evans will be in the future of his career and the rest of his career. I don't know if he ever will reach those heights of Captain America. And I don't necessarily know if he wants to. He played a major role in the second highest grossing movie of all time. You're not going to surpass that, but that gives you the freedom, the financial freedom especially, but also having this major network of people that love you where you can really do and act in almost any role that you want. And that's perfect for a guy who loved comic books but was purely an artist and loved theater and wanted to spread his wings and do whatever he could to prove that he could be a good actor. I'm excited for the next few years because I think Chris is going to be a much bigger part of Hollywood in the coming years because of this freedom that he has to pick and choose what roles he wants to do. And just look at the guy. He's going to age amazingly. So he's going to be in plenty more movies in the next few years, and I'm very excited to see what he can do. But if you did enjoy this video, why don't you consider subscribing? I'm going to be doing more biopics about certain celebrities in the future. I think my next one's going to be about Ryan Reynolds. But if you did enjoy this video, why don't you go slide on over to this video where I talked about the weirdos in Hollywood and why so many of the best actors are out of their minds, man. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.